A judge sentenced a young man to death by hanging. But he had no idea this was the very son he had been searching for all these years. What happens next will shock you. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. And if you're new to our channel, don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. "My name is Dayo," the prisoner said, his voice echoing off the walls. "I was responsible for the disappearance of those women. I used them for money, and I have no regrets." A gasp rippled through the room. The judge's jaw tightened. "You admit this?" he demanded. "Yes," Dayo replied. "I chose my path." Fury surged through the judge. "Then, by the powers vested in me, I sentence you to death by hanging." Many years before the trial, a baby had been left on the doorstep of a weather-beaten house in a small village. His mother, a troubled young woman, handed him to the old woman who lived there. "Take him," she whispered. "I can't raise a child, not with the life I live." The old woman, Mama Joy, gathered the baby into her arms. She smelled of wood smoke and fresh fish, scents that would become the boy's comfort. She named him Dayo, meaning joy has come, hoping the name would give him the future his parents could not. Dayo grew into a bright-eyed child. Each morning, Mama Joy tied his books with twine, kissed his forehead, and sent him off to the community primary school. He excelled in every subject, loved by teachers and classmates alike. During breaks, he chased a battered football across the dusty field, laughter ringing out. After school, he would sling a tray of smoked fish across his arm and walk the streets, calling out to neighbors with a ready smile. Even in his faded uniform, he looked proud to help the woman who had raised him. At night, by the glow of a kerosene lamp, he bent over his books while Mama Joy dozed nearby. When Dayo was 9, everything changed. The government awarded him a scholarship to attend one of the best private secondary schools in the state. Mama Joy clutched the letter, tears spilling down her cheek. 6 years later, Dayo walked through the gates of Starlight College, now a tall, handsome young man in an immaculate uniform. He was in SS3, Science Department, quick-witted, kind, and always smiling. Only one person seemed unmoved by his brilliance: Jane. She often teased her friends. "What could I gain from the son of a fish seller?" One Wednesday morning during break, Dayo left the library with an armful of notes. Ahead, Jane stood alone beneath a jacaranda tree, sunlight catching in her hair. For a moment he froze, wishing the earth would swallow him, but courage stirred. He walked toward her, heart hammering. "Hi, Jane," he managed, voice trembling. She looked up, a mischievous smile curving her lips. "How are you, Scholar Dayo?" They both laughed, the awkwardness melting. "Why have you always avoided me?" he asked, half joking. Jane tilted her head. "Maybe," she said lightly, "because you weren't bold enough to talk to me." And they both laughed. And that is their love story began. In a dimly lit room above a noisy bar, Dayo's mother coughed until tears blurred her eyes. For years, she has been doing prostitution and moving from one man to another, moving from one club to another, trying to escape the emptiness inside. She contracted a terrible and life-threatening sickness from one of the men she had slept with. The nurse told her, "If you don't rest and change your lifestyle, it could kill you." That night, she lay awake, and she remembered the boy she abandoned at birth. And she cried and said, "Lord," she whispered, "help me leave this life. Help me find my boy before it's too late." Elsewhere, Judge Adderwale sat in his tidy office, law books behind him, certificates on the wall. Years of winning cases had brought respect, but not happiness. He opened an envelope from his doctor. Erectile dysfunction. No chance of fathering children. He sighed, thinking of the woman he once rejected and the child he might have lost. Dayo and Jane have graduated from secondary school, were both admitted into the University of Lagos, full of hope for the future. Unfortunately for Dayo, he lost Mama Joy in his second year at the university. Mama Joy slipped and fell on a rainy day in the market and died. Dayo was heartbroken because that was the person who sent him to school, and he started thinking about dropping out. After Mama Joy's death, life became very difficult for Dayo. He was alone, struggling with university fees and responsibilities. Jane soon noticed how quiet he had become. One evening, she crossed her arms and said, "Other boys take their girlfriends out, buy them gifts. I can't keep defending you, Dayo." Her words cut deep. Dayo tried to explain, "I'm paying fees, buying textbooks, I barely eat." But Jane only sighed, rolling her eyes. That night, Dayo lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He didn't want to lose her to the wealthy boys on campus. Shame and fear pressed on his chest. By morning, he decided he needed another way to survive, to please Jane, and to keep her from leaving. It was this fear that made him listen when an old friend spoke about Baba Agba. His friend took him to Baba Agba. Dayo, whose eyes were already on his friend's cars and the latest iPhones he was using, thought about how happy Jane would be if he could also afford a phone for her. He refused to listen to Baba Agba's explanation, and he proceeded to do the prosperity ritual. 2 months later, he was already wealthy. He was happy together with Jane, and they enjoyed themselves together for 6 months. After that, he began to have nightmares, seeing Mama Joy crying, and very sad in her grave, shouting his name, "Dayo, Dayo, what have you done?" He ran to Baba the next morning, and Baba told him that he didn't listen to instructions, that there was something he must be doing every 7 days. If not, he would lose everything he had and would never be rich for the rest of his life. Baba told him he must always make sure a woman was with him every Saturday at 12 a.m. for sacrifice. Dayo asked a girl he met at the club for a one-night stand to test his rights on her. To his surprise, the girl disappeared and his money multiplied. He wept bitterly alone and said, "I don't mean to harm anyone, and I only want to be rich and pay my school fees and take care of Jane." After a year, Dayo was very rich, but had used over 50 girls for the ritual. Dayo's mother, who had finally left the streets behind, traveled back to the village where she once left her baby. But Mama Joy was gone, and the neighbors shook their heads sadly. She learnt that Mama Joy had died years earlier. No one knew what had become of the boy called Dayo. For months, she searched from one village to another, checking schools and asking questions, but there was no sign of him. At night, she cried softly, "Oh God, what have I done? Is my boy dead?" Adewale, who is now a judge with erectile dysfunction, began searching for Mama Dayo, returning to the same club where they met long ago. But she was no longer there, and her old friends had no idea where she'd gone. Still, both parents kept looking, clinging to a fragile hope that the boy was alive somewhere. On campus, whispers spread like wildfire. Several young women had gone missing in recent weeks. Police patrols began combing hostels and nearby streets, asking questions. Posters of the missing girls were pinned to walls. Yet no bodies were found, no clear trace of their whereabouts, only a rising fear that someone dangerous was on the loose. Behind the scenes, detectives opened files and mapped the cases, determined to uncover who was behind the disappearances. On the seventh day of the week, the day Dayo always set aside for his dark ritual, he invited another girl from campus, just as he had done before. But everything changed when Jane arrived unannounced. She froze at the sight of another girl with Dayo. Jane's voice rose in anger. "How long have you been deceiving me?" She pushed the girl away and shouted, "Leave my boyfriend alone." Dayo's heart raced. Midnight was near, the hour when every victim vanished. He tried to send Jane away, but she refused. "I'll stay the whole week with you," Jane said stubbornly. Dayo felt trapped, terror rising in his chest. As they argued, the clock struck 12. A sudden silence filled the room, and Jane was gone. Dayo collapsed to the floor. Tears streamed down his face as sorrow tore through him. "Mama Joy is gone. Now Jane too," he sobbed. All night he sat staring at the wall, realizing money and wealth meant nothing without the people he loved. At sunrise, he walked slowly to the police station. With a heavy heart, he told them everything about the rituals, Baba Agba, and the friend who lured him into darkness. Officers moved quickly, arresting Baba Agba and the accomplice. The long-hidden evil was finally exposed. After their arrest, Dayo, Baba Agba, and the friend who lured him stood before a crowded courtroom. Everyone waited to see what fate would bring. Baba Agba and Dayo's friend raised their hands and pleaded not guilty, insisting they were only advisors. But Dayo stood firm. "I am guilty," he said quietly. "I used those women for money." His words hung heavy in the air. The judge's face hardened. He sentenced Baba Agba and the accomplice to 10 years in prison each, then turned to Dayo. "For these crimes," he declared, "you are sentenced to death by hanging." Just as guards moved to take Dayo away, a voice rang out, "Wait!" A woman ran forward, clutching a worn file, Dayo's mother, tears streaming. She opened the file with shaking hands, showing a faded birth certificate. "He is your son," she cried. The courtroom froze in stunned silence. The judge's hands trembled as he read the papers. Memories of a young woman he once loved flooded back. He looked at Dayo. The face was unmistakable. Overcome, he stepped down from the bench, removed his wig, and embraced Dayo. The court watched as grief and love collided in a single moment. After a brief recess, the judge returned with new resolve. Justice must stand, but mercy could speak. He commuted Dayo's sentence to 30 years in prison, while Baba Agba and the friend would each serve 10 years. Behind bars, Dayo lived quietly. He read, worked, and searched for forgiveness. With every passing year, he grew older, wiser, and softer in spirit. 30 years later, with grey hair and a steady step, Dayo walked out of the prison gates. His parents waited, older but smiling, arms open. Though the road had been bitter, love and redemption welcomed him home. Proof that even a life scarred by darkness can find its way back to the light.